Think about it. A story can start anytime, any day, in any way. And this particular story started in September 1999 during a hurricane. That's when this little guy named Colin was born. Colin had his own way of doing things, of seeing the world around him, thinking outside the box to make things work, a sense of humor that many times drove his teachers crazy. Colin was in 8th grade, and it was February, and we had no idea that Colin's body was starting to grow cancer cells. It took the doctors about 10 days to figure out what was making Colin not feel well. And on February 22, 2014, Colin was admitted to Children's Hospital of Philadelphia with a diagnosis of a kind of cancer called leukemia. It was really hard on Colin. For about 7 months, he was really sick, spent most of his time in the hospital, lost all of his hair, lost about 45 pounds, and he wasn't able to walk. One of the parts that Colin hated the most was always having to be alone, not being allowed to be in school and see his friends. I know it was really hard for Colin always being in the hospital looking out the window. It felt like you were in jail. Even with cancer, you don't get to stop going to school. You just have to figure a different way out to do it, and Colin joined a lot of his classes through Google Hangouts. But finally, in late September, I got to give Colin his last shot of chemotherapy, and he was well on his way starting 9th grade. Things started to go back to normal, and we were living life like Colin had beat cancer. In April of 2015, at one of Colin's checkup appointments with his oncologist, the labs came back showing some funny-looking cells. So he went back to CHOP, and they went ahead and ran some tests. And unfortunately, the tests came back saying that he had a second cancer. So he started all over. It was really hard on Colin being trapped in a hospital room for 30 and 40 days at a time, not being able to leave. The thing is, it's really hard being a teenager in a hospital that was made for little kids. It was a pretty big deal when Colin finally got to go home. The thing is, Colin looked really great on the outside. But on the inside, all the chemotherapies that Colin got for 2 cancers and a bone marrow transplant really wrecked his organs and his immune system. Colin's lungs were damaged from the bone marrow transplant and kept getting sicker. And he was in and out of the hospital a lot. And he was taking a whole lot of medicine every day. Colin's doctors were starting to get worried. We were getting really worried too. The thing about Colin and his story is that even though every day had something bad for him, he also realized every day also had something good, and that connected with a lot of people. Colin's strength of determination even caught the eye of the Eagles, where the NFL gave him a 1-day contract to be a player. Colin stayed friends with the Eagles, and we found ourselves on a private airplane a few years later with tickets to the Super Bowl. And the amazing thing is, the person that provided the airplane to us, since Colin couldn't fly on a commercial airline, we had no idea who they were. They just did it, being kind. Our last time spent together as a family was at the Super Bowl, and this was all because somebody decided to reach out and help us. And that kindness, it was pretty amazing. On March 24th, 2018, Colin was admitted into Children's Hospital of Philadelphia one last time. On April 19th, with 5 infections that his body couldn't fight and lungs that had failed, Colin asked for me and his dad and his medical team to take the vent out, and he died that evening at 11 p.m. Colin connected with many people, and Colin Strong stood for many things. It meant being strong enough to ask for help, being strong enough to be the author of your own story, and being strong enough to recognize that even when things are bad, you look for something good within them. Like I said, a story can start on any day, in any place, at any time, and I think Colin's story is far from over. So think about it. What is your story going to be? Oh, and by the way, that music that's been playing during this video, Colin wrote that, together with Mike from Music Therapy, all those days, over 350 of them, that he was inpatient at Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. Pretty awesome.